they go?
Game of Fiction.
They said he couldn't read this many books. He would never get it done. They make me sick to my stomach.
You are now listening to Game of Fiction by Rare Candy Industries.
Okay, Gravity's Rainbow Episode 3, the series finale. Bittersweet, because I think it's nice to finish talking about this book, but also it's been really fun. Of course, I'm with my colleague on this very gargantuan doorstop of a book. It's Bernard T. Joy, you've said this has dominated your reading for the last year or so. I believe it.
Yeah, no, quite solidly, really. I mean, because what I was doing was like reading through all the Pynchons, so whether or not I'd read it before, I was just going through from start to finish, and that's that is a gargantuan effort to get through all that. So I'm sort of most of the way through now. I've got a couple of novels to finish off, ones that most of them I had read before at certain points, but the thing with Pynchon, as we know, if you've read them, maybe you read them when you were 22 or whatever, and you didn't get much out of them the first time. know, so it's well worth revisiting and looking at it again. So I've been doing that, and then of course in the course of doing that, his Shadow Ticket announcement dropped, and that's coming out in October. So I'll be getting that hot off the press, and have to find time for that too. So
sure.
He's totally monopolized and dominated my year.
Well, yeah. If when you read it, hit me up, because we're covering it too, and I'm sure we'll all read it at the same time. So because that'll be fun, because we have I have the same exact way. I'm glad I not discovered, but just first opened a Pynchon book when I was in my 30s, which was just a couple years ago. So when I first opened it up, I was like, oh, if I read this 10 years ago, I had to put it down the first. I just wasn't. It's just not. I'm not from like this big academic flowery prose background. This is an acquired taste for me, and so I'm glad. I think I would have put it down a long time ago. So yeah, I agree with you. If you read this, as part of your college, like studying postmodern fiction in college, I mean, surely you might have enjoyed it then. But I would say it has a whole new life to it. There's still a lot I have to get to. I mean, I haven't. I've done V and Gravity's Rainbow as far as tomes, but I've read, Crying of Lot 49, Inherent Vice, some of his smaller, more accessible work. And I know he has a short story collection called Slow Learner, which I have yet to get to.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That Slow Learner shows you a lot of how he developed ideas. Like Pig Bodine is still in there as a main character, and it's sort of like you can see how the sort of little fascinations that he had, that he then brings into these big, these big important works that he does. Gravity's Rainbow being, one of them. And actually, the interesting thing about Slow Learner is he's got a little introduction, and certainly in my edition, where he sort of says that himself. He says these were a young writer's ideas, but they've really not fleshed out yet, and I'm making a lot of mistakes with my writing. And that's always very nice to hear from a writer like Pynchon, who's so accomplished, to actually see where he's saying, well, here's where I went wrong, or here's where I wasn't quite master of my craft yet, which is good. One of the things he says, for instance, is when he was young, he was very repetitive with his word choice. So he uses the same words over and over and over again, which is sort of, and it is, once he's told you that, when you go into the stories, it can be a bit jarring. You realize that he's grabbing that same word over and over again, and it sort of shows a lack of imagination, or an imagination that hasn't matured yet.
Sure. No, I mean, writing is an older man's game. I mean, let's be real. Like it's an older man's game more often than not. Not everyone is Bret Easton Ellis where you have a hit when you're 18. Like you just don't. And even he got a lot better than Less Than Zero. Like he got way, way better than Less Than Zero, despite that being, one of his biggest books. But you have, with Pynchon, like V, I think V almost works. I don't think it ultimately does. I think it's a good book. I think it's worth a read. It's definitely canon, absolutely. But it's a first novel, and I think he bit off way more than he could chew. I think if it's just whoa, you're not there yet. Whereas the book we're talking about today, I think he completely achieves what he was trying to do with V, and then some. So before we get started with the Gravity's Rainbow, though, I will say, what are the odds? And I don't know when Shadow Ticket is set, but
it's end of October, I think, like October 25th. That might not be the exact date, but it's, I think, end of October.
Oh, it's the 7th. No, it comes out on the 7th, but October 7th. But the a lot of the parapolitical people their antennas went up when they found out he was dropping a book on October 7th. So just because of the geopolitical implications of that date.
I hadn't actually memorized that it was its date, but yeah.
But what I mean is where the setting of the book, like I don't know the time period in which it takes place. I kind of want to go into it kind of fresh, but what are the odds that we get a Pig Bodine reference in that?
Yeah, probably.
We might. We might.
Having read the sort of synopses that are coming out at the moment, I think it's going to be something. It seems to me like a very sort of Against the Day mixed with Vineland, that sort of thing. Probably a bit of some of the later novels in there as well. Some of the more noir stuff as well will be in there.
No, I can't wait.
It's sort of a mix, but I mean, it's
Yeah, and how can you synopsize
a return to brand, really? I mean, it doesn't seem like he's doing anything completely different.
Yeah, and how can you synopsize a Pynchon novel anyway? So when I see people like pitching it, I understand you have to do it for a publisher's sake, but I'm like, you're just gonna have to open it up and read it. It's just there's no way of getting around it. And then we also do have One Battle After Another, which is coming out, which is a loose, I would imagine a very loose adaptation of Vineland, which we're also going to cover here pretty soon. So even though I'm feel like we're finishing a chapter of Pynchon, I have like 2 more novels to read of his in the next 2 months. So it's
and again, it's like when you're reading Vineland, just thinking, how unfilmable is this? But at the same time, it's maybe one of his more filmable ones. I wouldn't like anyone filming like Gravity's Rainbow would have trouble. But Vineland, all the way through reading Vineland, you're always thinking of Quentin Tarantino all the way through. It's like very like Kill Bill, Kill Bill Volume 1, Kill Bill Volume 2.
I see. Yeah, nice.
It's like I'm sure Tarantino took a lot of inspiration from what Pynchon was doing in Vineland. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any sort of parallels in the film version of it as well.
It'll be fun. I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson is the guy to extract filmable moments of Pynchon novels. I mean, obviously, Inherent Vice, you can go a little more one-to-one because that's just a classic detective, kind of a stoner Marlowe tribute, whereas I think, like I said, in The Master, he takes elements of V without doing V, which I liked. Paul Thomas Anderson did say that he was going to film a crocodile shotgun hunting scene in The Master as part of an odd job for Joaquin Phoenix's character, like they do in V, but he said it was just not a possibility. I guess it wasn't going to happen. But so the guy wanted to, you have to really hone, you have to really center in on a few ideas of Pynchon, and it's more of a tone. It's more of an energy, and that's kind of how you adapt his novels. We're going to get you right back to the episode, but I just wanted to let you guys know of a few other things we offer at Rare Candy Industries. We have a Substack with free and paid subscription options. Free subscribers get access to all written content. That includes Bob's Red Pill. That's the best thing going on the internet right now. Trust me. Paid subscribers get full access to our premium episode feed. And that's just every episode we don't necessarily want to share with the general public, if you know what I'm saying. Again, that's rarecandy.substack.com. We also have merch. That link's a little long for me to say right now, but go to the description, go to our merch store, and find a shirt that's right for you. We have Rare Candy shirts, Dr. Bronner soap label shirts, Rishi mushroom shirts, all types of stuff there. Check it out. There's got to be something for you. And lastly, check us out on social media. On Instagram, we're Rare Candy Pod, but on Twitter, we're at Rare Candy Pod 1. All right, enough of that. Let's get you back into the episode. Well, let's get into the final third, or at least what we think is the final third of Gravity's Rainbow. I want to start with something that I found to be, again, very similar to what I said last time about Chicherin, where it was like I feel like I know what's happening here, but I do feel like there was a little bit of like another layer of something that I was missing. And surely enough, you've added some context that I was definitely missing in this. And it's the Schwarzkommando / Enzian, that whole saga, which we really haven't talked about yet. And but I think Enzian really becomes the character in the final act of the novel. Yes. Like he's alluded to, it's kind of mysterious all throughout. You're all these weird like shrubbery, like kind of like root vegetable elements of all these people there, where they're like growing themselves to die. You're just hearing these very odd, kind of eerie, kind of chilling in a way, like death cult, but also silly. It's also kind of silly, which is a very Pynchon dichotomy, is the silly yet cold. When you actually realize what's happening, it can very much scare you. And the so the Schwarzkommando, again, I'm going to kick this over to you because I was a little bit lost. But I think you added some great context here. What is the significance of the Schwarzkommando in this novel?
Well, I think you're so right to say that Enzian comes out as such a major character. I mean, I remember getting onto this part of the novel, this last third, as we're saying, and Enzian's character just pops out of kind of nowhere and becomes really such a vivid and important character that you really just want to follow him and understand what he's doing. These moments where he's riding through seriously bomb damaged cities, and his it's sort of interior way of looking at that, sort of his narrative of what he's seeing, is so very counterintuitive. It's not what we ever would expect anyone to think encountering a bombed city. So it's that sort of he becomes a really vivid character because you really want to work out where is he coming from and what's behind all this thought, And I think that leads you into thinking about who are the Schwarzkommando. So Schwarzkommando, German, means a black company or black command. So they're made up entirely of Africans. They're a paramilitary group that are made up of ethnically of the Bantu people, and particularly the Herero people, right? So the Bantu is a wider ethnic group, and Herero people are within that, and the people who would have been from what is today Namibia. And so that part of the world, and particularly the Herero people, have got a very long history for the whole of the 20th century with Germany. So the German Empire conducted a genocide in what is now Namibia in the beginning of the 19th century. I think it was from 1904 to 1908. And so the people that we see in the Schwarzkommando, these Herero people, they are the survivors of that genocide. So you see now already we've got something that's and Enzian is himself Herero. He's although he doesn't have a typically African name, which is another little piece of abuse really that's been heaped on Enzian, because Blacero, who is actually Weissman, it gets complicated. They've all got pseudonyms. So Weissman or Blacero has given Enzian a more German name, which is actually a reference to a local German flower. So
wow, I didn't even know that. I didn't even realize that. Yeah.
So even Enzian's name is a sort of imposition on him, a kind of abuse by Blacero, who was his sort of lover when he was a teenager, and an abusive lover. So all that's going on, and so Enzian's character as the leader of the Schwarzkommando is fed by this idea that the German Empire had already conducted a major genocide of his people, and now what's happening is like another chapter of that abuse, because we spoke about this last time. Last episode we spoke about this long tale of history, and at every stage of this long tale of history there is abuse. And that's what we've got with the Schwarzkommando, because they're already survivors of a genocide. And now what we've got is they are being systematically re-educated by the Nazis. So again, Germany, an imperialist, expansionist Germany, has come into their land and is re-educating them. And so the re-education is intended for the Nazis to get a foothold in Africa, which of course is all historical fact. Germany under the Nazis were trying to colonialize these areas and bring them to their personal war effort. But the other thing is just to facilitate this rocket program. So that is
Schwarz, it's Schwarz-Gerät, right? Is the term they use for a lot of the kind of the black rocket in a way.
Exactly right. Yeah, because the Schwarzkommando have sort of taken in, and Enzian is like just the epitome of this, because he has he is like the epitome of the pathology that's been created in this ethnic group because of all the abuse that they've suffered. And he sort of sees the rocket then in a totally different way than he's been expected to see it. They're supposed to be facilitating the Nazis' attempts at scientific power through the production of the rocket. But the Schwarzkommando and Enzian, they've taken the rocket, and it's just what we see all the way through the novel. The rocket has become symbolic. It doesn't just stand in for scientific progress or the power of violence, which is its more straightforward meaning. It's also got for the Schwarzkommando a sort of a totally weird symbolic meaning, which is the power of suicide. Right. Yeah. Actually, they want to use the bomb,
controlling your own demise. Whereas in the back, I know this is probably what you're getting to, but like in 1904, 1908, you were looking at this kind. I mean, you think of the it's a classic like movie trope is when like the evil leader, and I know this is inverted in a way, but like an evil leader sees, oh gosh, the jig is up, and then they swallow acid or something like that. There's a very famous one that died that way in the 40s. But just have you have that idea, and they have the idea. It was like, what in this inverted world, what better signal of agency could there be than killing yourself? Which is, as saying that, it sounds so weird, but you get in this novel and you're like, well, if I've been hacked apart my whole life, basically, and in V, he does this too. I think it's almost the same genocide he refers to in V, where it's just just disgusting scenery of just like he gets really in the weeds of the stuff that's happening in that same thing, and you just go like, this is how I guess this is my only, if the only path to life is death, then if I'm in control of that, as weird as that sounds, like you could see maybe these people being in the zone, just going, well, this is how I win in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pynchon's making a really specific psychological argument as well, really, because, Freud comes into Pynchon a lot. Sure. I don't usually go in for Freudian readings or reading Freud too much. I know him well enough, but it's not usually my go-to. But you kind of need to go to Freud a little bit when you're reading Pynchon, because Pynchon is so invested in Freudian theory. So and really all that is to say that we might talk later on a little bit about Freudian death drive, because it's exactly as you've just said, that like if you wanted to put that in its plainest sense without any jargon, it's a sense of our drive as human beings to do those things that are actually biologically against our best interests. So anything we do that's sort of we spoke about this in the first episode, with Ernest Pudding, getting into scatological sex, that is going to lead to him contracting E. coli and dying, So that's his death drive. It's the part of the human being, and human beings, from a Freudian point of view, from a Lacanian point of view as well, human beings have this uniquely in the animal kingdom, because we're the only ones that really seek out our own demise or our own, biological disadvantage. and sort of why is that, you know? And I think Pynchon's really going, why does everyone seek out their abusers in this novel? Why is everyone seeking out this bomb that is so dangerous? Why do they almost seek out, you know, wanting to be bombed or wanting to be killed? And I think, you know, where you go with that is that it is an escape. It is a really paradoxical situation, but to seek your own demise or your own destruction in that way actually is an escape from biological determinism. So it's a way of saying I am more than just what is the biological parameters that I've already been inset with. And also it's an escape from social compunctions as well. So it's not the world at large is not going to enforce things on me, because I can actually take another route, even if it's to my, you know, to my demise, to my death, to my destruction. So lots of that, like, without getting jargony, all that's in Freudian death drive and Lacanian, what Lacan does with death drive too. So all that sort of stuff, Pynchon is very aware of this, I think, right? He's actually thinking psychoanalytically as he's going through all these characters who have, you know, a death wish, a death drive.
You said something really interesting about seeking out your abuser too, which I think is obviously a massive thing. And on one hand, you can just say reduce it all down to Stockholm syndrome, and I'm not so sure you'd get that wrong by doing that. But also, I think there is a constant search in the characters of Gravity's Rainbow for a constant, good or bad, but a constant. You know, like something consistent, something this and that. Now, you know consistently what you're going to get from Blissero, right? If you actually know what he is. Now, Franz Pokler didn't really understand what he to his words claims he doesn't understand what's going to happen to him, and he thought, oh, I'm going to build a rocket, and this is what I went to school for, building rockets and all of that. Everybody else, you see Katya and Enzian when they have that kind of meetup towards the end of the novel, where they're kind of both speaking this way about Weissman / Blissero in a way of like, yeah, I mean, he is evil, and they can look in each other's eyes in the same way they look into Wiseman's eyes and just see what each other means by, hey, I mean, he's kind of all I know. I've been shut out from everything else of this world, and I know him as this constant. Yeah, it's a constant of abuse. I get to pass it down a little bit too, you know, like and all of this, and I'm a cog in the abuse, in further abuse, the cycle of it, but it's a constant. Right, the world all around you see there's bombs dropping everywhere. There's kind of like these paranormal deity kind of situation happening, entity, I should say, and all of this. But you know, one thing is you're going to see that Weissman guy, and you know exactly what you're going to get every single time. And it's bleak. It's bleak to look at the world that way. But Pynchon does a good job of putting you in these being perceptive with these characters.
Absolutely, yeah, and another thing that continually cut through the whole novel, we get it with Franz Pokler as well, and Lenny Pokler as well. We've spoke about this, how they're really cliched, actually.
Yes,
like those characters are cliched examples of they're Nazi archetypes, right? And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, by the 70s in which this novel's written, already the Nazi personality has imbued itself into the culture so much that it's become an archetype, you know. So it's like we kind of know all those. If you're going to depict a Nazi on film, even today, there's certain things you bring in, you know, and one of the things is Blissero, Weissman, and particularly in his persona as Blissero, he's this Nazi, you know, high-ranking Nazi officer who is strangely au fait with culture and music and ballet, and you know, we've seen that sort of depiction of a Nazi so many times, and it's that sort of it's so, yes, in a sense there is something that you look to, and you say there's a sort of admirable you know, something to admire, some admirable veneer over this brutal maniac. What was the film recently? Actually, they did a great film recently. I can't remember. It was out. It was all set in the Nazis' house.
Zone. I didn't see it, but Zone of Interest. Is that what you're?
Zone of Interest. Yeah, that was it. That was great because I believe they set it all in the Nazis' house, where they're sort of having dance parties and it's very cultural, and the crematoria is next door. So
kind of Franz Pokler esque, in a way.
Yeah, it's a similar thing that's going on. So in that sense, that admirable part of the, that veneer that's covering over, that veneer of civilization and culture that covers over the bare mania and brutality of the Nazi, that, people like Enzian and people like Katja can point to and say, well, I actually want that. It's attractive to me in some sense. So again, Pynchon is great when he brings in these total dichotomies where and inversions, where we get to the point where you're chasing your abuser. Everyone in the novel's chasing their abuser, trying to find them. Slothrop's constantly chasing after Laszlo Jamf,
and not necessarily to kill them either.
And not necessarily
like it's not a revenge story. A lot of times, it's kind of look me in the eye.
I get the feeling when I read those bits. I'm not sure if it's just a feeling of mine, but I get a feeling that there's something parental about it. Like it's almost they want to see their parent one last time or something like that, or
well, we know it's that way. We know it's that way because of Slothrop's kind of Oedipal complex with his father, where you get that when Slothrop's in his final kind of decay, I guess we could say, like as he's kind of decaying into like just particles, like it just seems like that's what's happening. And we get those like really, and we'll talk about this a little more in depth, but like you get that in a sense where he's like he's constantly had that relationship with people in his life. Like he's never, and you see this in the dating world, like it's all of this stuff. Like when the first thing is abuse, even if you try to steer clear from it, sometimes people crave it. It's sad. Like it's a taboo thing to talk about, but it's a thing that everyone has known somebody that's that way. And it's very frustrating when you're an outsider to that. And Absolutely. We're the reader of this. We are the outsider. We're like, what are you doing? Just go live in a shack. Like, like telling Slothro, just go live with the pigs. I don't know. Like, just do something. But you realize that that's not really a possibility. That's not and maybe you can't even escape that. Maybe the bomb world will find you there. In fact, they probably will. Slothrop is like a tagged animal, which he's then reduced to. I know we're talking about Enzian here, but Enzian and Slothrop are very similar. And Chicherin, they're all very much the same kind of class of person, just in a different geographical timeline, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the novel seems to do this, doesn't it? We've discussed it a lot so far. Just every character seems to subtly or not so subtly mirror all the other characters. I mean, you mentioned Chicherin, and Chicherin and Enzian are half brothers in the novel, but they're really closely allied together in what they're trying to do.
Sure.
We spoke in the last episode about Chicherin as part of the Likviz, who were the literacy program of the Soviet Union, and so that's him going to the people of Central Asia and imposing these sort of imperialistic ideas of how you're to read and write and have an alphabet. And then you've got Enzian on the other side, who is sort of a victim of Blasero's doing the same thing to him. And in a sense, as a leader of the Swartz Commando, he's imposing that on all his underlings as well. A sort of a German way of looking at science and rationality that is being imposed on these African peoples, these Bantu peoples, who had their own very rich culture. It just so happens that Bantu is a very extremely rich culture. It has like its own developed forms of poetry that you find nowhere else on earth. So all that's erased and gone.
Rhythms, so many of the rhythms of modern music. Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think that's well said. I mean, you have these, it's very interesting because Enzian, I mean, you see the cycle of abuse, and like there's my read of him, and again, I didn't have the best understanding of him as probably many people who've read the book, but when I think about Enzian, you kind of think he's, because there's all those like kind of, I mean, they're not really vague at all, but like the homosexual, like the homoeroticism between him and I'm forgetting the other guy's name. That's in Enzian's kind of Schwarz commando group that's also gay.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but you guys will know it who I'm talking about if you've read it. But it's just that constant pass down of it, and like I'm not trying to make a statement on homosexuality here or anything, but at the end of the day, like you can kind of see where Pynchon's going with this, where it's just like Enzian has to stop himself constly from like becoming Blissero.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah. It's quite clear that he has embedded in him this nature. Again, it's like someone coded the software for him to just go take this pathway, and he has to constantly get out of that to not do it.
Yeah, and it's like we were saying last time, the Slothrop and that horrible scene with him and Bianca, and it's that dynamic again of like he must become the abuser in order to exercise the history and trauma of his own abuse.
Yeah.
So it becomes like this horrible cycle. Enzian's in this horrible cycle too. And it becomes like not only an inward violence of self-destruction that they all suffer from, but also an outward violence of got to do it to someone else, so that we can exercise the fact that it was done to me. And again, very psychologically true. Because it's so many abuse victims, not all by any manner of means, but a great many abuse victims will go on to become abusers because that's psychologically can be an effect of abuse. And again, Pynchon's on the money, I think.
I think so too. I think it's a lot of conclusions people don't want to come to, but we've also all seen it before. That's the thing. Like it's this thing. So now I wanted to couple this with the Weissman's eyes, because I love those parts towards the end of the novel. Just all these characters sharing their experience of looking in Weissman's eyes as this like as the closest they'll ever get to God, really, is this Weissman, because he has effectively installed himself as God. The Rocket, in my opinion, acts as this anarchist demolition crew for a new God to take hold. Now, to the soldiers of that group, and I include not even just the German soldiers in all of this, but Katya, Enzian, Slothrop, in a way. Like this is like I think they're completely like built a dome around. If you believe in God, I think Weissman's basically put a dome around like the Simpsons movie where you can't get past this area, and God is me, and it's almost a reflection of that, where anytime you're trying to get past me, you see in my eyes this kind of like almost Medusa like quality of kind of this is what you are. And they see like I think it's like the cross of the Rocket they see in his eyes, and it's all these like biblical, like mythological things that people see at once, and I find that to be these, like I don't think the book is inherently Christian. I just know that the idea he kind of reaches out to people who view the world that way, like myself, and he's like, this is what these characters are seeing. Right, is like somebody else seeing God, and I think he does such a good job with this. And like, again, can you blame them in this quality, in this state? It's easy for us to say, oh no, sit down and pray and stuff. It's like, you don't want to be the hindsight prophet of all of these things. Like, of course, we all think we would do that, but we probably wouldn't in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this is such a concern of Pynchon's. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, like you kind of see it even more wonderfully, I think, in Mason and Dixon, but you see it definitely all the way through Gravity's Rainbow. This sort of the technology is taking the place of the divine. So he's very concerned. I mean, what his religious views are, I'm not sure, but he's certainly very concerned about the movement of our human concept of the divine, mapped onto something transcendent and otherworldly, and then that movement of that transcendent otherworldly divine coming into things in the world that seem to us to be divine. Like the awesome power of like an atomic bomb, for instance. You can forgive someone if it was the first time they'd ever seen such a thing, or to see that as godly. Was it Oppenheimer even is famously known to have quoted from the Hindu Bible? I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. When he sees the atomic bomb, so that sort of the awesome power of it is so analogous to the divine that it's very difficult for us not to take everything that we had thought of in Christian terms or Buddhist terms or whatever, Islam, Jewish terms, and we take all that and we map it onto things mundane in the world. And Mason and Dixon, it's particularly strong because he's writing, during the Enlightenment. He's writing about the life stories of Mason and Dixon, and they are living in a time when science is presenting itself as this new force in the world that needs to be, is calling out to be understood, and the people who experience things for the first time, just the basic models of the universe, and how the Earth's passage around the sun is a new piece of information. And you can see how people, if that was new information to you, then your concept of the divine completely shifts. Right. And he seems to think that it shifts onto a much more mundane context, and we start to see the things around us that we control, incidentally, as godly. And so that brings us to Weissman, I think. Weissman is a sort of embodiment of that sort of dark humanism, whereby you say there is nothing above the human. There is no controlling force that we might call the transcendent or the godly. I am God, and therefore what I can produce technologically are the attributes of God. And so the rocket becomes a divine thing, but a kind of dark divine that we kind of maybe a demiurge that we maybe don't want to have control over the earth.
100%. No, I mean, you think about it in a way, I mean, just to make a current thing, most people who get hyper into like tech materialism, materialist thinking, they view the world the same way. Now, are they dropping bombs? No, but they are controlling every aspect of your life. My phone could suggest, if we bring up a product at any point, my phone could suggest to me, just from this conversation right now, to buy it right after we're done recording. It's this constant all-seeing eye of us. I mean, most people, whether they're trying to or not, when you innovate and when you are in hyper innovation mode, especially when we've already established this very high tech world and stuff, any further innovation is typically to replace God in a way, or something like this. And in Exodus, you have the golden calf scenario where there's God frees the Jewish people of slavery, does all of these massive things. I mean, and they're catastrophic, right? If you're an Egyptian ruler, you think like, my gosh, this is a genocide of what happened to us. But we know that the chosen people were taken, across the sea and everything, and wiped out everything. And then but even still, after God has shown himself in all of these ways as being the person, the protector, the giver of life, the bringer of death, and has shown has shown himself as that, they still worship idols and objects. Like, there's still a moment, and again, this is like, I mean, we're super divorced from a lot of this stuff right now, and it's a slow process, but this is like, hey man, I just did this for you. All I asked was for your allegiance, and now you're worshiping this shiny object. And it just feels like Weissman is the golden calf, but he also has the power to bring death. The golden calf was an inanimate object. Weissman is a very animate object. That's the scariest part about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting actually that you bring the Exodus story, because I know I've always thought the Exodus story, and when Moses goes off, gets the tablets, comes back, and they're worshiping an inanimate object that they've made, right? And it always seemed to me almost a faintly comic.
Yeah, sure.
Of the Bible. Yeah. And he even Moses says at that point, he says, he's asked, "What's this you're what can you hear before he gets to the camp? And he says, it's the sound of celebration that I hear. And I think whenever I read that line, I think the sound of laughter. I think the sound of comedy, how ridiculous is this that I left you for 5 minutes and you start worshipping this stupid thing. And I think Pynchon is quite switched onto this too, because again, you see it in Gravity's Rainbow a lot. There's a lot of silliness in Gravity's Rainbow. In fact, we might come on to talk about a bit in relation to the Freemasons in a moment, but but in Mason and Dixon as well, there's a moment in Mason and Dixon where this deification of objects gets really, there's lots of moments, but there's a particular one that's sticking out in my mind now. They start to worship a cheese.
That's right.
A cheese, right? So it's just a massive cheese. And that's definitely the golden calf,
Yeah.
But Pynchon's a master because he doesn't make it a golden calf, he makes it a cheese.
Right.
And it's just like this, how stupid is this process of deification?
It's even dumber because it's a product of the calf. Like it's not even the calf itself. Like you're actually like you're getting like you've discarded of the calf after a while. Like you've only liked what the calf can produce for you, which is the opposite of a true faith-based relationship. It is just only taking the fruits of a good part and never the struggle, never the faith, never the tests or anything. So
and it's such a comment by Pynchon, again, very left-wing comment on capitalism as well. Just like we're not only worshipping inanimate objects, we're worshipping objects we make. So we're worshipping the process of making, and capitalist consumption is actually what we're worshipping. And it sort of becomes it becomes, a process by which everything is not only mundane but dispensable and can be, interchangeable, can be thrown away. It's this sort of dystopian world that Pynchon is showing us.
From the 5 to the 6, we be in the mix with that red candy paint job on the whip. I need food for the kids, money for the rent. Fuck a lockdown, baby, kids on the ship.
Pynchon and the Freemasons. Fun. This is a fun part. It's a really fun part. We get a saga of kind of a side plot, a very, very Pynchon-esque side plot late in the novel, which he loves to do. When you think he loves to get you on this path and kind of get you in this kind of like free-flowing zone, and then you're like, oh, a side plot, here we go, and then the reader sometimes will skim a few pages, go, oh, this goes for many pages. And I actually love this one though, and it's Miklos Thanants, who is Bianca's father, correct? In the thing,
that's right.
Yeah, he is searching. He's aboard the Anubis. Definitely not a guy that we love or anything, but he is he's searching for Weissman, I want to say, or something of that degree. He's on this like search, and he's jumps ship and is rescued by a guy who is LARPing as Ben Franklin, who's trying to just like basically. It would be as though if you saw like if you wanted to be the next Isaac Newton, right? You would be like, well, I'm just going to sit under an apple tree and just see what, and I can't do anything until the apple hits me in the head, right? Like it's a very very funny way of looking at this, and he's trying to basically electrocute himself so he can become the next Ben Franklin. Now, Pynchon digresses in the fact that it says, well, Ben Franklin is a Freemason. Well, it has nothing to do with any of that. And, it's tongue in cheek. We're laughing about it. I don't believe this is Pynchon's actual view of Benjamin Franklin, but it's a lot of people's view of it. Like I've been hearing this since I was in high school, like just people saying like, Ben Franklin, he was just one of the guys. He was up. It's about who networking and being part of this. And there is something to that. You hear about all these people with Skull and Bone Society, all these people that tend to be part of a certain thing and part of an in-group, and who knows what that means, but why are they all part of the in-group? But I do think it's Pynchon does play with this idea, and I think a lot of people, and depending on your political leanings, and I think we've done a good job of being pretty dang apolitical on this one, which I think is a good way to actually dissect this book, because a lot of people will then go into like parapolitically mapping this book, and I think you miss a lot of stuff when that happens, and they might say the same about what we're doing. But the idea that Benjamin Franklin, it's not about like, well, kids, if you want to become the next great guy, you got to go to school, you got to work hard, you got to eat right, you got to exercise, you got to do all this stuff, and then you too could become the next so-and-so. And with Pynchon goes like, yeah, that's not a bad lifestyle to be on, but you got to know the right people. And you got to do the right things. You got to make the right oaths. You got to make the right sacrifices and stuff. And you realize all this is after 550 some odd pages of all the in groups being showed to you in this crazy way. And then what Pynchon does is he's a time expander. He is a timeline expander. And he goes, actually, this thing is not the new world that I'm showing you right now. This is just par for the course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, he does this a lot with just throwing in, sometimes in the form of a character who has extended dialogue, sometimes just an aside. He'll throw in a mention of some sort of secret society. So, you know, you've got the Freemasons are mentioned a lot. The Jesuits are mentioned a lot. He of course famously mentions the post office as being like, and V you've got this massive weird side story about the post office during the Confederacy and how like the ships that were being brought to support the Confederacy were actually the whole exhaustive paranoid fever dream is hard even to recount, but basically the post office is at the center of some dark shadowy government, shadow government, and he'll obviously mention the CIA, the FBI,
sure,
are right in there. Those are our secret societies of today. You know, that those are the perhaps the greatest secret societies. This is sort of Pynchon's fantasy, or it might not be Pynchon's fantasy. It might be a reality. Who knows? But this is the idea anyway. But I think like what really is interesting that Pynchon does is he's got that sort of idea of a shadowy, dark, frightening underbelly to politics, this shadow government.
Sure.
But he's also like joking about and having a laugh as well. He's sort of poking fun at secret societies too. Like he's at every point, it seems, he seems to be giving us a sense of all of these societies. I think we spoke about it in the first episode, actually, how the FBI and the CIA are shown throughout Pynchon's novels as being kind of, when you get to the crux of it, when you get into the inner sanctum of those agencies, they're all fools and they don't know what they're doing, and they're all flying by the seat of their pants, and all these big international situations are getting themselves into and are actually just they're just flying by the seat of their pants. They don't know what they're doing any better than anyone else.
He'll extract like one person of that group to know like this is actually a really competent person who actually capitalizes on the incompetence within the organization to get his agenda through, right? Like that's what he'll do with a lot of this. Like you picture, I know he's just a detective, but gosh, what's his name? Was it Josh Brolin plays him in the movie, but in Inherent Vice with the banana and everything like that guy. You just picture a lot of these. I think it's Bighorn. I can't remember what his name is, but he's it's just like you get a lot of these guys in there where it's that it almost like you said it pokes fun at he's constantly trolling, or I won't even say trolling because I feel like that's too mean for him. I think he's he's poking fun at the paranoid person reading this a lot of times, where it's like you will pick up a Thomas Pynchon novel because there's so many allusions to all of these secret societies that you might already be well versed on, but he'll, instead of getting there and seeing the Eyes Wide Shut party that you think is happening, a lot of times it's like guys like sweating, eating like and like farting in a room. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times that's happening, which, you know, maybe it's right in between. Maybe it's right in between both.
He brings it down to the bodily and the mundane. You know, there's a great little moment in Mason and Dixon where there's a dialogue going on with a Jesuit, and the Jesuit gives a big long sort of argument as to why celibacy is very important because through celibacy we can engage in work, and through work we get to the divine, we get to the transcendent. And Dixon, who's a very, Jeremiah Dixon, who's a very earthy character, is portrayed by Pynchon, says, "What? No fucking." So, he just brings it down to like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to have celibacy, even if it gets me to God, because it's too much of a price to pay. I'm more of an earthy, mundane guy.
Right.
So it's that sort of thing. Those are like the sort of, and even the people who are running the secret societies are really at core earthy, mundane. They've got human fallibility. They've got human stupidity. Mm-hmm. They've got all this. He's sort of, and it comes back to the portrayal of Benjamin Franklin, which is only a tiny little portrayal, but it tells us a lot. It says, it talks about his jokesterism. Mm-hmm. It uses that phrase, like Benjamin Franklin's jokesterism. And what he's talking about with the guy who's LARPing as Benjamin Franklin is the key and kite experiment, famous key and kite experiment that Benjamin Franklin did, where he's put a kite up. He had a conductive thread attached to a key, and he was just trying to work out the mechanisms behind lightning and electricity, which was unknown at the time. So he's doing this. So it's got this sort of serious scientific experiment thing going on. But, and I think Pynchon actually quite rightly points out, well, Benjamin Franklin was a serious scientist.
Of course.
But at the same time, there's a little bit of theatre and a little bit of being a jokester and a little bit of going out with the kite and, showing off, being a bit he's a bit of a jokester as well, Mm-hmm. I think, if you look at Benjamin Franklin's writings in something like Poor Richard's Almanac, mm-hmm. It just comes through that there was a jokey side to Benjamin Franklin, and actually it feeds in. Now I'm thinking it feeds in so much with the who side of things, mm-hmm. because Benjamin Franklin was sort of allowed to do things like let's go out with a couple of servants and do an experiment today, mm-hmm. So people of that age, they were rich people of that age were afforded that ability. They could go out and they could play, and through play things are discovered. So science is play. So
Tesla and Edison was literally like, hey, there's like 6 rich guys, we all need to like get access to all of them so we can experiment for the rest of our lives. Like that's all it is. JP Morgan, can I have millions and millions at the time, which would equate to like billions at this point? Like, can I have all this money? And then they'll say, well, yeah, as long as I can financially, as long as I can profit off of it and stuff. It's a deeply American story. I mean, it's an honest look at an American story. And, I kind of roll my eyes at some of the like college kids, like, oh, they were all just, this and that. It's like, well, it's pretty tough to build a country. Like, I'm sorry. It's one way or another. Like, you have to give people credit for getting it done. But also, it was probably really silly too. Like, we're American. I mean, speaking here for the people listening and stuff, and I know you have probably a pretty good understanding of America. We're silly people. Like, and we're kind of brash. We're kind of, you hear people's interpretation of America all over the world. We're kind of like, we get stuff done. We, do all of this. We kind of like brute force, but also it's like funny and it's kind of carefree. And that's kind of and I think that's how Pynchon kind of really nails it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a sense as well. I mean, that the founding fathers of the United States, they kind of had to have this sort of, like Pynchon's term for Benjamin Franklin is practical jokerism, right? And mm-hmm. It sort of fits for, like I say, for Benjamin Franklin, but they all had to have a sort of theatre to them, and well, there's some theory out there, about the ruling classes of the United States or the Americas in general before the formation of the United States always had to have a bit of the con man about them, or a bit of the snake oil salesman. And if you think about it, it's kind of true, because if you're going to forge a nation or a new polity of any kind completely out of whole cloth, you've got to you've obviously got inheritances from Europe. But if you're going to make some entirely new national character, for instance, you've got to sell that to the people.
Sure.
And the only way you sell it to the people is a bit of snake oil and a bit of riz. You know, I mean, you've got to give them something that they'll go, oh, amazing, and they'll follow you based on some sort of theatre. So you can't just be given really straightforward pronouncements and manifestos. There's got to be some theatre in it, and in that sense, America's still a very theatrical place. You know, your politics is extraordinarily
especially
theatrical.
now. Yeah. No, I, you know, there's a couple things you brought up here, and we have much to discuss, but I do want to put a pin in this. This is the final episode, so of course it's going to go long. But the kind of I always harken back, and I talk about this all the time. I think regular listeners of RC will probably roll their eyes because I bring it up constantly. But you think about, like, the reason I like Blood Meridian so much, more than just the style, more than anything, more than the brute violence, is the idea that somebody who's kind of this, like, you know, oh, guys, quit the fighting kind of guys. I live here in the West, and I'm talking to a man from many miles away on a computer. I'm living in a house that has, you know, central heating and stuff like that. Like, I have all of these things, and I'm over here going like, hey, be nice to those people, Blood Meridian. Like, you don't have to kill those people. And so it makes you wrestle with that idea. It's like, well, this is how these things get built. And there's a very big track record of it. So unless you're living in the woods with bare feet and stuff like that, don't, like, your opinion kind of doesn't matter. Now, that doesn't mean we have to be brutal to everyone constantly, but like, stop crying about what happened 250. Like, I think McCarthy is saying that in that book. And I think a lot of people kind of try to obfuscate that a little bit because of the prose, because of his kind of the mystery in his writing and stuff. And I think Pynchon does the same thing, where he's looking at it in a different way. I think Pynchon might be leaning a little more in the left side of it, but he's also like, this is what happened though. Like, we can't, like, the idea to, like, when we constantly build these new societies, and like when you listen to parapolitical people talk, they're kind of in like this dick swinging contest in a little bit, where they're like, well, you don't know about this actual secret society, and then this one, and then it's like, yeah, I know, but like, what are we even arguing about here at this point? Like at this point, we're trying to get so divorced from reality of what, like, is that we're actually living in. And I think Pynchon is just kind of like toying with that a little bit. So I think I really loved that part of the book because it kind of harkens to that.
Yeah, and I think that you're right to bring it up. I think that they do such a similar thing, Pynchon and McCarthy, and just in this, they're very different writers, but they do have this. It's what we're talking about again. This long tail of history and this long tail of abuse. But it facilitates, you know, because, you know, McCarthy starts Blood Meridian with the epigraph of
the biblical thing, mm-hmm.
The 10,000. No, the one that's like tens of thousands of years old. Hundreds of thousands of years old skull that we find, and the skull has evidence of having been scalped. So it's like the foundations of the human species are, you know, what evidence we've got of the foundation of the human species is already effaced by scalping, by the evidence of mutilation and violence. So you can go back as far as you want to go, and mutilation and violence is part of the human character. And Pynchon is telling us this too. Far back as you want to go, we've been brutalizing one another in one way or another. And I think what unites writers like that, and it's something we're so frightened to speak about now.
Yeah.
And it's human nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you daren't even say that phrase, human nature. But, you know, there are things that certainly have been constants for human history, and one of them is violence.
Yeah. Have you ever been so mad that you want to punch a wall? I have. It happened to me not long ago.
Yeah. It's in us. Yeah, it's happening. It's in the system.
Think about it if somebody was running at you with an axe and you got really mad, you know, like it's just one of these, like it's one of these things we reap the rewards of all of this, like, more or less. You can say that's not true, but when you are a progressive, right, you have to admit that you're trying something new, right? Like I think Pynchon is saying that you have to admit that, like, you're doing something with like no historical precedent. Like what you're doing. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying history disagrees with you. He is, and I don't even think he's pro that. I just mean he's just like, look, that's what's. I'm sorry. He looks in all these almanacs. That's his research and all of these things. He's like, I'm kind of coming to the same conclusion on a lot of these stories.
Yeah.
So that's what Gravity's Rainbow kind of does. Is at the end of the day, we are kind of brutes. We are this and we are that, and we can distance ourselves from that. I think we've done about as good of a job as we can. Maybe there's room for more, but I don't know. I don't know.
And we discussed it earlier. Pynchon is like in the last episode. Pynchon is invested in the Marxist view of the end of history and the beginning of a utopia,
right.
But he's not at all confident that it's going to be something that happens in his lifetime.
Right. And that
or ever.
And that's the problem with people that don't have any degree of spirituality but want to do human progress. Is like, hey, you might not be here to see it. And, if you're a materialist that's and which, I mean, I'm not saying everybody's like this, but a lot of people on the left that I know are like kind of like hyper materialist, even atheists to a degree. I'm like, well, is it really enough for you to say that when you leave the world and you're just no longer a part of it, like you're fine with it helping somebody? Like, I almost don't believe it. And that's what gets them to stop what they're doing a lot of times, is that they'll go, we haven't even moved an inch on what this is. And you realize, like, this might take hundreds of years to get what you're trying to do done. And that's saying that if it's even possible. And so it's kind of this like thing where that's why I love Pynchon's style, because he brings in like the paranormal, the spiritual, like a lot of woo-woo stuff, but it's very centered on human nature too at the same time. So it's just kind of like it kind of goes back and forth. And I won't even say back and forth. Sometimes it's muddy. It's like a real muddy transition of it. And as we keep going, there's going to be moments where it gets very muddy on what's happening and what's not. So Roger Mexico confronting Pointsman, I think, is a really cool part of the book. I really love when Pynchon kind of harkens back to what you would think if you were to project something onto him, or project a memory onto him, as we all like to do with Pynchon, is kind of like him growing up like Cowboys and Indians and espionage and just these like shows, or even, just classic shows that they would watch. And they kind of come into his novel when you think he's this big brained kind of like postmodern stream of consciousness guy. But he also centers in on like chasing. And sometimes it's even Tom and Jerry. Sometimes it's Tom and Jerry level silly, like, but when Roger Mexico, who, we don't, the middle of the book, we don't get a lot of him. We're kind of, we get a return to Mexico and Pointsman, although we see a lot of what Pointsman is doing throughout the book. However, he's not really the one. We're not getting a look into what he's doing a lot of times. But I think when Roger Mexico is hunting down Pointsman, and of course there's the woman Jessica that's involved in this. It's a kind of a classic story, but it kind of harkens back to me to a Brigadier Pudding humiliation ritual, but I don't know. This is kind of a hot take. I don't know that the ritual, the defecation ritual, is nearly as humiliating to Roger Mexico about as to what he actually goes through in this, just because Mexico is a statistician, right? He is very much what's in front of me is what's happening. Let's quantify what I see. And he almost refuses to see that he's hallucinating, and all of these weird dimensions are opening up. You get a lot of the Von Gold double exposure things happening when he's hunting down Pointsman. There's a scene of him urinating all in the 12th house, and all of this. But it does remind me, and I'm glad you at least agreed that these should be referenced, of kind of Rosemary's Baby and Marathon Man. Just the kind of like, once it finally stops, the action stops, and you look, and everybody you thought was doing their own thing is all just looking at you. Yeah. And it's very scary. So I love that whole scene, including the silly island moment where they're riding the plane together, the very Lynchian weird part of just the man in the corner that just stands in the corner of the room. I loved all of that, and I found it kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean, as when we were discussing it, you brought up Rosemary's Baby, and if nobody's seen that film, they need to go and see it. And
masterpiece,
absolute masterpiece. And it was, and yeah, you referenced the final scene in which Rosemary comes in, and there's a satanic cult around the baby's crib, and that wonderful, terrifying music that's been played at the same time. And
it's multicultural. There's like an Asian guy, so it's like it's not just like a one race doing this, one religion, it's all of this, and then you have this really human moment from Mia Farrow, still worried about how the baby, which is clearly a devil child, is being rocked in the cradle, and it's like that's like ultimately you just have. I feel like that's what's happening here. I mean, this book is written right around the time that book's coming out, or that movie's coming out, so you almost wonder a little bit. But that was a massive movie, and so and then Marathon Man. There's a scene in Marathon Man where there's this big chase, and they end up in the same building, and it's all the guys that were supposed to be protecting you or not, and that it all reminds me of when he goes when Roger Mexico goes in the house and he sees guys that are like just like warehouse guy. He thinks they're just like warehouse guys or just smoking guys doing drugs around the building, but they're all part of this big sprawling conspiracy. And he just goes, huh? And he has to wrestle with his own way that he views the world because it's happening right in front of him. It's all in the same room. So I really like that.
Yeah, no, I really think you've hit on something with those references, because while we were talking there, I was just thinking about the final scene of or one of the final scenes of Marathon Man, actually, where they in that film, the Laurence Olivier character has come to find some diamonds that he'd left in a vault and take them away to Paraguay or wherever it is that he's hiding out. He's an ex-Nazi. And the encounter between the hero, Dustin Hoffman's character, and Laurence Olivier's Nazi character, Dustin Hoffman's character takes the diamonds away from him. But then he goes into the briefcase and he throws the diamonds at him, and they're in a water cooling plant, so the diamonds are falling through into the water and disappearing. And Asen, he says, eat them. And that moment is just marvelous because the Nazi character he's such a rationalist. He cannot work out why a man would take diamonds away from him and then throw them into the water or say swallow them. I don't want them. He'd much rather
you take them and start your own operation with them. Yeah, it would still be mad for him, but he would be like, oh, obviously that's what you do. Yeah.
And there's something similar here going on with the Roger Mexico, sort of like you say, it's a Tom and Jerry chase sequence. Also, the reasons Roger Mexico is even involved, it's because of a split up with Jessica.
Yep.
That he kind of puts off on Pointsman. You did this to me. It's a personal thing, but he puts it off. You did this to me. And also he's just come to realize that he's really realized that his map of the bombs is the same or corresponds with Slothrop's, erection map.
That's right.
So he's confused. Basically, he's an extremely confused man. He's having hallucinations. He's not in his right mind. He's involved in statistics. He's a rationalistic man. And he has to have some way of writing this in his mind, right? There must be some conspiracy against me then, if this is all happening. And then to discover in that sort of way that the conspiracy that's against you is totally not rationalistic. So it's what we've been talking about, once you find the secret society, that they're not playing with a full deck. There's something irrational about the way they're going about things and weird and not even understood by them. So it's that sort of thing I think makes that this scene where he goes to the 12th house to confront Pointsman, that's what makes it really eerie. I think that's the eerie moment in it. And I think as well there's a sort of interesting dialectic going on. We've spoke about Roger Mexico's all about statistics and rationality. Pointsman is a Pavlovian behaviorist.
Yeah.
So it's sort of randomness and chance, which statistics are randomness and chance.
Of course, yeah.
Versus a determinism down to the core of the human experience. And that sort of, there's a dialectic going on between those two things. And I think what happens, you know, when we encounter the secret society, or when Roger Mexico does, he realizes that neither one is true. It's a dialectic between the two. You enter into the situation, and it's not a random thing that's happened to you, because you were always kind of going there. You were always sort of being led like a dog on a leash to this thing.
Right.
But also there's randomness built into it. Like, those specific people didn't have to be there. That person didn't have to be standing in the corner in that weird Lynchian way.
Right.
All the events of the situation didn't have to play out the way they played out. But somehow we feel that we've been led there like a dog on a chain. So it's completely discombobulating for the human being that the two things are interconnected.
Yeah.
But that's Pynchon's argument. Pynchon's argument is that dichotomies are not dichotomies. Dichotomies are part of a system of how things work. And you're just going to have to get used to it. It's complicated, but you have to get used to it.
Oh yeah, it's exactly that, and you figure, you know, with Pynchon's background being a very smart, you know, physics man and all of this, he's been that type of guy when he's seen himself slip into that like hyper statistician kind of you know, which is easy to do when you see something that doesn't agree with what you've done. It's easy to go, well, there's always an element of chance, you know, like it's easy to write those off, and it can be frustrating to people sometimes. They go, well, hey, like, how come whenever I say something that's completely disregarded, but whenever you're put under a microscope, you leave that element of chance, which you're actively trying to reduce? And you know, sometimes that happens. But like when it's happening to you in real time, you know, that's the ultimate horror thing. When you can't, okay, I don't even have the ability to like get my brain working to even get that kind of PR statement out for statistics. You know, like I think it's unreal. Like I that part of the book was like, I kind of was floored when I read it. I just was not ready for that. I didn't know where it was going. I thought it was going to, I mean, again, is it even happening? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's like we're talking about the Pockler scene. You know, people say, "Is that even?" I think we both sort of were unanimous, and it does happen. It does rape Ilsa, or this doppelganger of Ilsa, but a lot of people would say that as well. But that's so actually so many scenes in Gravity's Rainbow. I've heard people say, "No, this is a fever dream. This isn't happening."
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of like. It's kind of like one of those, you know, you're always told when you teach young writers, you know, and you say, you always say to them, never say at the end, it was all a dream. You know, you sort of betrayed your reader if you do that. But Pynchon doesn't seem to care. He does, you know, he openly brings in hallucination and fantasy and things that aren't actually happening.
I just don't like when people do that and they're just trying to deny that something so heinous and gross is happening. Like, to me, like this isn't like for me to say the Roger Mexico element of it. There's nothing like inherently gross happening. I guess like urinate. I mean, for this book, urinating on someone is nothing.
It's nothing.
Like, it's literally like you got off Scott. It's a slap on the wrist. But like it's literally. I mean, they don't even react much to it. They're just like, dude, what are you doing?
They don't even react. That's the weird thing.
Oh, Roger, you know, like you almost picture Laurence Olivier, like the calm dentist, or Laurence Olivier in Marathon Man, just going, oh gosh, of course you're doing something like this. Like it's to be surprised by it would actually comfort Mexico, right? Like for these guys to be like, whoa, excuse me, sir. Like for that to happen, they would be like, yeah, it's working. So for me, it's like, I do think that this has more of a chance to like not be real, because it's actually not that like graphic and gross or dealing with an issue as pedophilia, sexual abuse and stuff. Like I mean, again, you could make the argument for almost any scene in this book that a lot of this stuff isn't even happening, but I just think that's not even, again, we've talked about this, that's not what you should be thinking about when you read this book. It's struggling. You're to basically, I say take everything as happening in this book, and maybe only leave yourself a little bit like that statistician's chance thing, you know, like maybe leave that for a case, because I think a lot of this stuff is happening in the book. I mean, perhaps I'm just a little too earnest about the way I view things, but like, hey, I think I think the book works more when you think, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. I think the book works more when you actually take what's happening as at least real to the person experiencing it, like in their mind, from their perspective.
And I think like Pynchon's very like Terence McKenna, let's say. He sort of believes in the drug trance or the hallucination or the dream as being at least having some sort of ontological presence and being something that's actually, there's something going on in reality when we dream or when we hallucinate or when we are, bombed out on drugs. So it's like there's a dimension of reality to everything. Yeah.
What was your reference to Blue Velvet here? I'm with the ear. I thought that was interesting in here.
Oh yeah, I mean, just the fact that like so as we were saying, the Roger Mexico sequence is something it's a completely random series of events, but there's a certain sense of it being deterministic too. So the randomness and determinism are together. And in Blue Velvet, of course, in one of the first scenes, the hero finds an ear under a bush, and it turns out to, so it's like this sort of the most random event you could possibly imagine, finding this ear underneath a bush, and then that leads to a whole series of random events, but the random events are all deterministically connected to one another, as though the hero had always been, been going down that track. He was always going to meet Frank with the, nitrogen tank or whatever. So that was all laid out. And, that's so Lynchian, isn't it? I mean, all these moments in Lynch where there's moments that are completely random to the hero of, the protagonist will be thinking, what a random series of events, but then everything chimes with everything else. Even sometimes the villains seem to know what's going to happen in the next scene, or they can prognosticate what's going to happen in the next scene. So yeah, Lynch is a master of this too. The paranoia, and that's to get to the crux of it. Pynchon's sense of paranoia has that in it. Has that sort of paranoia for him isn't a condition or a pathological condition. It's perhaps a window into understanding how human beings actually do interact with the world around them, because it could be the case. I think Pynchon's telling us that little thing that you thought was a complete coincidence is actually a part of a big nexus of information that you're not privy to. It wasn't a random event. It was an event that was connected in a really intricate way to a lot of other events that are actually driving how you interact with the world and who you are. And it's actually, to me, really plausible philosophically, because I mean, if you see a random thing, you at least noticed it, right? Yeah. And there's at least a reason why you noticed it. And that connects to things you noticed before, things you're going to notice later. So the determinism and the randomness, they're yoked together in some way, and I think Pynchon is playing with that and trying to show us that. Lynch does it too.
One thing it doesn't require a lot of discussion, but I do think it was one of those moments where, and I think every Pynchon reader understands this. It's kind of is this I have it listed as Buddy the Bulb because I thought it was so dumb. Like the name is so dumb that I made it dumber. I made it dumber. Yeah, and so more sing-songy, more but it's Byron the Bulb. But it is interesting. And at first you kind of think, you're like, oh gosh. I remember you said you hate when the animals talk. Everybody has their one thing. In Pynchon novels where you're like, not this, dude, please don't do this right now. Like, I think this works though. I think this is actually a really good element of this. So now there's Byron the Bulb, and now there's you want to talk about Lynchian right here, the haircut scene where they're haircutting the general's hair, and there's like this one guy who's like it's like there's this like odd weird thing where it's a human powering a machine, and then the light bulbs flickering in this weird Morse codey fashion, and like you just picture like a Twin Peaks The Return, specifically The Return, is like you kind of picture Lynch filming it that way. Actually, now that I think about it, we'll never get it, but Lynch's take on a Pynchon novel would be so interesting.
Amazing. We'll never get it.
People would hate it too. I think people would hate it. Like a lot of people would hate it, but if you like it, you would love it. You'd be like, wow, this is, but anyways, and then all of a sudden we get transported into Byron the Bulb. And Byron the Bulb is a all-seeing sentient light bulb that has been around in many chaotic scenarios, including Franz Pokler's saga, which is why I tend to believe the Franz Pokler thing is real and not a fever dream too. Because I think when you introduce this, as surreal as it is, I'm like, well, if you keep like adding to that, I don't know. And then you have the he's also in like whorehouses where women are, being abused and stuff. And there's all sorts of elements that Byron the Bulb is seeing. And he wants to, there is this like silly Pynchonian like CIA for like appliances or something that he introduces, and they're monitoring this. They want to make sure light bulbs only have a certain amount of life to them, which always seems like a silly like Home Depot like hardware store man joke, like where it's like, oh yeah, there's a secret society that makes sure this light bulb doesn't last longer than like 2 weeks. I feel like he's making something fun out of that joke, and but getting at an actual thing amongst many well-intentioned people about collectivism. So now Byron the Bulb wants all the other appliances to be like, listen, guys, if we rise up together and we see our common enemy and we see this, we can get this done. We can get, we can have a better world for us and the people that we're illuminating. We can all be better. It's all connected and all of this. Now, none of the other appliances have any interest in this, and they don't even have the ability to really like understand what he's saying. And what Pynchon's saying a lot of times is, and we think about this with Weissman, like either you're a part of the op or you're a subject of the op, or you can be aloof enough to hope that it never reaches you. Those are like kind of the three things. You kind of hope to be the third one. A lot of times by the end of a Pynchon novel, you're like, I kind of hope I don't see any of this. I kind of hope that I'm not sentient enough to know what's happening, but kind of tortured in a way that no one believes me or just even cares what I'm saying. And so Byron the Bulb it has the curse of like long life. It has the curse of being around forever. And he sees a new generation of appliances constantly that all run into the same fault. Now, to them, it's not a fault. It's just a function. To him, it's a fault because he has the difference in him of being around forever, and you get the idea he'd rather just be smashed into pieces. In fact, there's elements where you should be, and stuff. But it's kind of this idea to anybody, especially when you know Pynchon, as being around these countercultural movements and just seeing one by one them all decay, whether it's from inside, whether it's from bad actors, whether it's from drugs, whether it's from this, and whether it's just from people growing up and realizing, hey, the world as we see it, I'm just going to try to succeed in it. He just goes, I think he's very, as the online term, black-pilled on collectivism, like just kind of, it's just not going to happen, to him. Like, and at least that's what he's saying in this book to me, or in this saga, is like, that's one of the ultimate curses, is to be hypersentient and everybody else not understand it or have any interest in what you're saying. And you have to just sit there with all the knowledge that you have and no application of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why like the Byron the Bulb sequence is like typical Pynchon. He's taking the silliest possible silliest possible avenue for discussing these things, but they're actually extremely deep philosophical things that he's discussing, and actually they're probably some of the most, for particular reasons, some of the most philosophical things that he discusses in the novel. So Byron the Bulb, like, is, like you say, he's got this curse of long life, but also this curse of prophecy. He kind of knows how to fix the world. He kind of knows what we could do to, bring about that utopia that we're all looking for, and but nothing else in the world is going to listen to him. So in that sense, he's like, from antiquity, he's like the prophet Cassandra, who who told the Trojans how the war would end, and that the Greeks would deceive them, but wasn't listened to. So it was her curse again, an ironic curse given by the gods,
I see,
that she would have knowledge, or the Comenian Sibyl as well, who appears in Rilke's poetry, but also in an epigraph by T.S. Eliot, famously, the Sibyl is one that a person who's been wished for or gained from the gods eternal life. And in the T.S. Eliot epigraph, she's found by some local boys in a jar. She's all shriveled up. And she actually lives inside a jar, which is funny because I think maybe Pynchon might have been thinking about this. The jar, the light bulb.
Yeah.
Could have been,
Sure.
So anyway, this old shriveled up Sibyl in the jar, and she says to them, "I wish to die," because when it comes to it, eternal life, the human being isn't made for it. The human being can't control eternal life, and so to pair the two, and this is what Byron the Bulb's got. So you've got this silly bulb, which I think is a joke, ultimately, right?
Right.
But deep down, he's got the worst curse that any human being could have, which is not only eternal life, but also the gift of prophecy. He knows how to fix the world. So he has to and I suppose the gift of sight as well. So he can see it all go wrong forever. He knows how to fix it. And no one will listen. So that sort of thing, is really interesting. And I think what's really interesting about Byron the Bulb as well is, so all that we've been discussing, those are deeply human concerns. So Pynchon's decided to put human concerns, the most human concerns, into the body of an inanimate object. And again, not just any inanimate object, but a produced object, an object that's been produced for, capitalistic industrial processes. He's a human invention, and somehow he's more human than the humans who've invented him. So it's this sort of, again, Pynchon's always wanting to invert things, always wanting to mix them up, and there's a sort of, I suppose, he's very early, really, and for the 70s, having a real discussion about cybernetics, because the discussion of cybernetics is all about how much a machine is able to approximate a human being. So our current debates about AI are all cybernetic debates. They're all debates about at what point does the AI, let's say, overtake human capacities, and then in that sense, if we are just like feeding off the AI in a sort of very passive mechanical way, do we become the mechanism, and the mechanism become the organism?
Right.
At what point does it switch? And I think that Pynchon is dealing with that profound question. And it comes in with characters like Gottfried, who is the human component of the bomb. So we've got a person who's a human component of a bomb.
Yeah.
And we've got a bulb that is the most human character in the novel, or one of them.
Yes. That's a great call. So now what we're doing right now, and I think the way we have it ordered in the notes is good, is the end of the book requires the human element. I mean, and it's a very bleak ending. It's weird because it's bleak, but it's not. Like in the way I think about it, it's obviously bleak because it's a young boy who's been sexually abused. He doesn't get the chance to become a little more rogue like Enzian, Slothrop, and Katya. He's basically picked at his prime to be wrapped in this. We get revealed that the imipolix G is the chemical, this kind of like hybrid plastic component that is essentially a conduit between human and technology, or a bridge between human and technology. But as you kind of like, as Gravity's Rainbow is happening, you kind of maybe, at least was my experience, is you kind of think you see humans falling by the wayside a lot in terms of all of this. But then you realize, no, this still requires a human component. And you take an innocent boy who's just been absolutely tortured since birth, similar to Slothrop, Enzian, Katya, like, but he won't have the opportunity to inflict it on anyone else. Therefore, you figure he loses. Maybe he would lose some of his. You maybe think maybe it should have been Slothrop. Maybe in their idea was like, man, if we had caught Slothrop, he'd be the guy, right? Like he'd be the component. Maybe that's what this is all for. But Slothrop has gone rogue. To the utmost degree that he can go rogue. But Gottfried is at the right time they wrap him in a shroud like he's already dead, but he's alive during this, and that, as that last launch is happening, you just realize, yes, we are building a horrible world, but no matter what's being built in the world, the human component, whether it's a human buy-in, whether it's humans creating it, whether it's humans submitting to it, is very, very important in this world. Which is, to me, it's like, is that worse than humans being irrelevant? I don't think so. The problem is we're Byron the Bulb. You have the Byron the Bulb where you're the one guy not submitting and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that's,
and there's a whole, again, dynamic between the control structures and the individual here as well, because it's like the two stories are very nice to pair together, and Pynchon does, of course, the Byron the Bulb and Gottfried, because not only do they invert in sense of Byron the Bulb is the human and Gottfried is the mechanism, but also in terms of like the power structure that's applied as well. I mean, that they're both subject to what we could call necropolitics. That the power of the state, or the presumed power of the state, to decide who lives and who dies, in order that systems can propagate themselves. And it's almost a terrifying essential of all social life that decisions will be made at all levels about who lives and who dies. And we're very squeamish about this now, because we simply don't want to believe that we live in societies where that happens, and where calculations are made on who lives and who dies. But Pynchon, again, he'll go to the places we are squeamish about, and I think he's doing that here. He's the bulb that is made to die at a certain time in order to fulfill its function in the industry in which it is made. And then also this Gottfried character, like you say, he's shrouded like a dead person. He's placed in the bomb. His body will be sacrificed to this process of the bomb, and it's a big, huge meta comment on how many bodies are sacrificed to the military industrial complex,
and the transporting of the bomb. It takes all those people. They're almost transporting it by hand. Like towards the end of the book, there's a big saga. You have the Chicherin Enzian saga towards the end of the novel. They're all transporting these things. Like they're on the pathway, I should say, to transporting these things. And Chicherin, I think, gets off the best. He just goes and hangs out with his witch girl, and it's like, nah, we'll see. But like everybody else, it's just like, yeah, well, this is despite being hyper sentient, like we get these thoughts of Enzian, they all seem like very smart people, Slothrop and all that stuff. They're still on like ants controlling this, still like ants. The collectivist, the only form of collectivism they have is transporting this bomb, and then they also, then we have Gottfried, who, again, why not just kill him beforehand and put him in the bomb? No, he needs to be alive for this. Like it's very important, and he doesn't break down the ultimate science of it. We don't need that. None of us need that in this part of the thing. So when you just, it's very, I was not prepared for that. I say that in the best way possible. I was like, wow, the human element of all of this. And again, people can view that as the most bleak thing of all time, or at least humans are essential.
Yeah, I know. I'm struggling to see the positive in it, but I know what you mean. It's like,
no, but I mean, like, would you rather be completely discarded?
I know what you mean, yeah.
Or used as a pawn, and I don't know. I don't know the answer.
No.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's a difficult question.
Because I might rather just be like, firing squad, go ahead. Yeah.
It's like, well, it's, if you take it in its most negative dystopian form, it's it's the most terrifying part of like any necropolitics, because if a necropolitics is about who lives and who dies, perhaps the scariest bit would be who lives. You know, like
exactly.
You have been selected to live in order to do a certain function or to perform a certain function. No one would want to think of that, the life being that, being simply kept alive for a function.
You think of heaven and hell, right? Like hell, I feel like you're way more alive when in hell. You know what I mean? Because you're meant to experience hell.
Oh,
like in that way. Like in heaven, you're very much like part of heaven, you know. Where it's hell, I feel like you're the person you are on earth experiencing hell. You know, like it's this kind of way. Like I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that's a whole nother discussion, but you think about it in this way. Like I think it is a masterful ending of the book. One more thing I think we have to talk about is just how we lose Slothrop, and there's one aspect of it I think is a very on the nose. You get every aspect of Pynchon in it, and that's the when Slothrop is looking and he's in the bombed out city, I forget where it is, but he's just looking at it, and he's looking at a photo of like the hot pinup girl next to an extremely phallic bomb, you know, and the whole time it's just like this whole thing is centered around the phallus, right? This whole book is just constant allusions to phallus, sex, you know, in good sex, bad sex, I mean every part of it, and just this like phallic, the phallus as at least a huge component of bringing life to Earth, you know, and then creating a bomb, which then, you know, to some people says they brings new life, but it ultimately does bring death to the world. You have that, and then Slothrop is basically what is he, dosed with drugs or something, and he's just because there's that really great scene, which is it's a complete jump scare, even though it's funny, is like kind of the last win that Slothrop gets is his bait and switch with Marvy, where Marvy gets castrated instead of him, and I love the line where it's like, and Pointsman is embarrassed, basically. Like he's just embarrassed. It's so embarrassing for Pointsman that he castrated the wrong guy. Like that's the guy we feel bad for more than anything.
And that's also a really brutal scene, you know, the castration. It's crazy. Sort of maybe a little bit ameliorated by the fact that Marvy himself is such a
we don't like him.
Horrible character. But still, you know, a brutal castration at that point in the novel, maybe one too many disgusting events.
But like I will say, you know, you're right. Like we don't like him, so it's kind of, or like he hasn't really made us laugh much. Like he hasn't, like he's just kind of this brutish like Popeye's Bluto villain kind of guy in the thing, so we don't really get super attached to him and anything, and then that happens. So Slothrop goes through a kind of a he becomes like this odd like Marvel character where he's like leading an odyssey of people to save this like weird ever moving world with sentient buildings that move around. Again, I think we can tie that in a little bit to Byron the Bulb and a lot of these things, but then also he's faced with this idea that his father's always wanted to kill him, right? His father's always wanted to kill him. And then you have the Oedipal thing because of the relationship to the mother, competing for the mother's love. And, you know, you could take that as one thing as, Slothrop's father, whether his father has been his actual father or his father has been those who raised him in labs. Those can both function as your father, always trying to kill you in a way, or at least trying to render you into nothing, and which is effectively what happens to Slothrop. And I thought that was interesting because it is a tough relationship to have. Like I am not a person, when I see state officials or anything, I don't necessarily look at them and say that guy wants me dead. Right? I don't necessarily do that. I know there's a lot of people that do. But also, I don't know that I would be like trusting that guy ultimately. You know what I mean? I would like to keep a couple layers of separation from said person, right? Like if you met a CIA agent or something, like, and they actually like disclose that information to you, like even if they didn't mean anything bad from it, I'd be like, I'm probably not going to call this guy again, you know, to hang out. Like it's not, I don't wish the world bad. I just don't, I can't be myself around you. I feel like everything's recorded and stuff. And it's just this relationship between humans and authority that I think that you get out of Slothrop and the father complex. It's less about dad and son, even though it is for sure, and more so state and person, you know, and citizen, I should say, civilian. To me, I thought that was really well done in there, and that to me is really sad. That part is just watching Slothrop kind of decay, and you get the idea that maybe that's his own like Soylent Green, look at the flowers death kind of, where you see Edward G. Robinson, that really just heartbreaking scene of Edward G. Robinson, like submitting to this new form of death, which we have now, actually, ironically.
All the science fiction has become like prophecy.
I know. I'm like, it's like, yeah, wouldn't that be crazy? Oh, it does happen. Yeah, we just don't have good actor. I don't think everyone looks as compelling as Edward G. Robinson when it happens, sadly. That's the bad part. But yeah, we have this element there, and I think that's kind of just the last thing I wanted to say about this of what happens in the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the to watch Slothrop just sort of disappear into
so sad.
Into the, it's like and it's again a masterful thing that Pynchon does, because he's like as Slothrop disappears, he disappears from the narrative as well. He becomes less frequent. He becomes like less clear. His representation becomes less clear. So we get sort of a situation in which like it is almost as if the literature itself, the process of writing about him itself, effaces the character, and he disappears in that way. But and then I think what I was thinking when I was reading that the end of Slothrop was just the fact that Slothrop has always been this sort of character. We've never actually seen him for who he is.
Yeah,
we've never seen him as an individual.
Yeah,
he's always been effaced and erased by the context in which he exists. I mean, his identity and history are identical in a sense, and not just identical, but interwoven in such a way that his identity is the history that it's in and embedded in, and the history is him. It's like there's another character earlier on that really shows this really strongly. Is at the beginning of Gravity's Rainbow, there's a character who he's absolutely synonymous with the First World War.
Oh,
so
yeah.
So his life is absolutely synonymous, to the degree that on the day of Armistice, when the First World War ends, he dies. So
that's right. That's right.
His organism is so profoundly mixed up with history that there's no difference between the two. They become identical. And like we spoke about in the first episode, Slothrop is so clearly this because of the fact that his sexual impulse, that is so primary to the male human being, the erection, is actually the rocket. And the two things are so synonymous as to be so interwoven as to be synonymous. So Slothrop was never, I mean, we get this sense of Slothrop disappearing, but I think we also get the sense, well, no, because you never actually saw Slothrop. You never saw him in the first place.
Yeah, was he real? Was he just this, like, is he a cautionary tale within the story? Is he I agree. And then you thought of it never meeting the real Slothrop, and then couple that with your father, the most sacred bond between parent and child can be an evil one at times. And you think about Ilsa and Franz Pokler, like, does he ever know his real daughter? Like, this is kind of like concept like that. I didn't even think of those two ever being related in that sense, but there's this it's sad. And like, then there's that, I mean, and then there's a Pokler and Slothrop meetup, right? Like in there where the pig, whom we said is sexually abused by Slothrop, is in a very odd way, but the pig does lead him in this like very odd way after Slothrop meets that kind of like hole in the wall family that like means well, but again they almost seem like part of this whole thing too. Like it's like nothing. It all seems like Slothrop the whole time is like, I think Roger Mexico goes through for a slight moment what Slothrop goes through the entire novel in a way, like where it's like, there's just this kind of hall of mirrors, like kind of weird, like theme park ride orchestrated by someone else to scare you in a way, or lead you into a certain direction to give you the illusion that you can hop off at any time. But if you hop off, it's because I told you to hop off, just like the train through the zone and stuff, that scene. And you just have this kind of, when the pig leads Slothrop back to Pokler, and Pokler is just kind of a shell of himself reduced down to a pig, I think, kind of like Slothrop is like to a farm animal. It's like livestock, something and a pig, what do we know about a pig? Pigs are smart. Pigs are smart people. They're a lot smarter than anything else you see on a farm, like, and we've seen
and
that
they're quite identical to us in terms of like their makeup. That's why they use pig hearts for
Exactly.
Or they did use pig hearts for transplants. So
right, exactly. So you just you view it like that. It's like you're reduced to a pig, even though we kind of already are in a way. Like at least I don't believe that, but just Pynchon does a better job of doing that. And then Pokler kind of just is. They have like a little conversation, and it's just kind of like two guys that are just reduced to nothing, and it's that part's really sad, but I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, and I think it's like the another point to make about the pig again. The pig keeps coming up. We've talked about it, I think, every episode.
He is the pig man. He's the pig man for the last third of the novel. Yeah.
But from his Puritan background, there's this word, the preterite, right? So
yes,
it's very hard to like work out what Pynchon means by the preterite, but it keeps like William Slothrop, the Puritan ancestor, always associates the pig with this character, right? So it's like someone who's damned, right, in the religious sense. So someone who will not reach heaven. But then in the ways it's associated throughout the novel, it's actually comes to mean something like someone who's controlled, right?
Yeah.
Someone whose destiny is not his own. Someone who is subject to some sort of greater control system over him, to the point that his own agency dissolves to nothing, right?
Yeah.
So William Slothrop had this idea of the pig as preterite, centuries before the beginning of this novel, or the time period of this novel. So that is what Slothrop becomes. He becomes, a complete. It's not even a pawn. It's not even a pawn. It's someone who dissolves into the system that makes use of him.
Yes.
The system of control and the system of order that he comes in contact with isn't one that he's fighting against. He can't fight against it. He's dissolved into it. He becomes part of it.
Yes.
And I think that's the sort of where we get at the end of the novel proper. That last page, which is called The Descent. Right, yes. It's one of these little. The novel ends with lots of little cameos, little pieces that give us some new philosophical angles to look at the novel from, basically. And the last one's The Descent, and in The Descent, what we have is the actual fall of the rocket, the descent of the rocket, and it just so happens to be falling over a movie theater.
That's right.
So everything comes together. You remember we were speaking in the last episode about things like vision, the science of light, literature itself, the violence of the bomb. All these things are associated with one another because they are ways of shaping and reshaping the world, of obliterating the world, so a new world can come about. So it's very instructive that the bomb should fall at the end on a movie theater, because I think he's making this point. Vision, science of light, rocket, they're all ways of reshaping the world. And when the world is reshaped, of course, that is only facilitated by our physical deaths.
That's true.
We've all got to die. For the next world to start, we've all got to die. So it's this sort of, and again, it comes back to the beginning of the discussion today, when we're talking about Enzian and his suicide cult.
Yeah.
It gives them credence. Yes, we need to renew the same way that cells in the body renew. So I mean, these are not my beliefs.
Right.
It's certainly Enzian's, right? And it's this sort of, again, deification of the rocket, deification of death, and the individual becomes nothing in the flow of history. The individual is someone that comes as a blip in history, must be destroyed in order for the next thing to come about, and the process will go on into infinity.
Yeah, and then you get that kind of retelling of Slothrop's history, right, through like the tour group or something, which is also really bleak. But then, I mean, you put it in the notes, and it's now unlocking something for me. But that's Von Gull's retelling, like of the folk hero. Right, of the folk hero, like in the Argentinian folk hero, which we talked about the last episode, which is this is this like meaningful thing, but you're going to get another man's retelling of it, another man who does not have your best interest at heart. And you start to think, like, if we destroy the world, not only is that destroying the world, but to the new world's going to wonder, well, what was here before me, right? That's just a human impulse, no matter what. And if we're taught humans are essential, they are still going to have these impulses to know what was before me. So you get the Von Goghification of Slothrop's story. You take out the essential parts of it, and anything, because his whole life's been orchestrated by people. And even to the point of perhaps the erection map, like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Like, it's like, is the erection map, is that calculated? Is there ability for him to get an erection at a certain point? I mean, again, it's not worth debating that, but I just mean, you have to think that a lot of these things, we don't know what's organic or inorganic, but we do know that one guy is not going to tell you the whole story. And when you blow up every aspect of history, which a lot of people try to do constantly still to this day, to maybe shape a better narrative about progress or something, or at least keep the progress linear. If that's the case, you are going to be at mercy of a director, in a sense. And I know I don't mean director in necessarily a film thing, though he is one in this, but you got to wonder who the director is a lot of times.
Yeah. Or an author, because I think like that Pynchon's pointing the finger back at himself a lot. I think he is Von Gogh in a sense.
Yes.
He's saying that I have orchestrated this narrative that you're now coming to an end of. And it's interesting that you should say, right, so you're coming to the end of the narrative that I've orchestrated.
Yes.
And I'm now showing you it to be a complete artifice. It was never, you've never met any of these characters. You've never known any of these characters. You've seen it through my narrative, which is an invented thing. And then now go away and work out, how many things have you seen with your own eyes, actually, and how many things have been come to you through the course of media in some way, shape, or form, and what parts of it can you actually call actual experiential parts of your life?
It's a tough thing to deal with. It's a tough thing to deal with if what you experienced was what you wanted to, it's an annoying thing to hear in real time when you see something that no one believes. Is like, well, you sure you saw it, or is that what you wanted to see? Or is this what someone showed to you and stuff? Yeah. And it's tough. I mean, like, and I tend to think of The Crying of Lot 49 in a sense of like, is it worth exploring? Because The Crying of Lot 49 is a lot. You read it at the end of it. It's Oedipus just ends up at the auction, and she's lost most things in her life, albeit good, or were they great? Was her husband an awesome guy? No, but he was pretty benevolent. I mean, he was a radio DJ and loved to do acid, and this is the this is the late 60s or something. But she loses pretty much most things in her life and doesn't get the answer. And I think Pynchon, a lot of times, a lot of these things are cautionary tales more than people admit. It's like, hey, I don't know the answer, and you just read 766 pages of what I wrote. And it's like, is it worth mortgaging what you see in front of you as good? Is it worth that? Because everybody knows the rabbit hole guy. Like, the rabbit hole guy's not usually in a good mood. Like, when you know somebody, when you know somebody that went down a rabbit hole recently, they're happy that they found something kind of cool to talk about, but beyond that, they sacrifice a lot, and a lot of it's all up here that you sacrifice. It might not even be physical, but Pynchon does toy with the reader a little bit, a lot of it, I should say. He in almost every novel you read, it's kind of just like, hey, like, at the end of the day, you might want to just accept what's in front of you, whether it's real or not.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
It's a narrative. It comes back to what we said last episode about the Kyrgyz light, and the Kyrgyz light is to be reborn. So if you're going to have a real experience of the real world as it is, you're going to have to totally be reborn, which is a painful process. There'll be birth pangs involved in that. Or as the Akin says in that song, you can stay by your red fire, you can stay by your little comfortable life that you've got. All right, you will know that it will be fantasy to a large degree, and it won't even be your fantasy. It will be some social construct that's been foisted upon you, but it's comfortable. And like, I think maybe Pynchon is making definitely, I think Pynchon's saying that the mass of people, most people, will choose that second option. They'll say, I'm for the comfortable irreality rather than the reality that is extraordinarily painful.
It's like my there's a this is like my faith in life. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus and all of this stuff. And there will always be people that say, will say, what if you found out for sure that was not real? Like, what if you found out for sure? Well, first off, I mean, the concept of faith is that I wouldn't believe the person telling me that, but that's not nearly the interesting part of the story. Is I would continue to believe in it.
Yeah.
And because I don't like the alternative. And that's the reality I choose to have construct, because I do believe that's the reality that was someone constructed for me. That's what I believe. It's easier for me to do that. And that faith intensifies the minute I see the rest of the world not make sense. So I'm not preaching here to anybody. I'm sure people with all sorts of things. It's just that's the way I view the world. And ultimately, whether Pynchon believes in what I believe or not, I think he'd like my process there.
Yeah, no, I think so, because like Pynchon brings in whatever his religious views are, he brings in the image of God, and that's important.
100%.
But I think it's interesting. I mean, I heard there was a piece of writing by a Sikh guru years and years ago I read, and I always thought this is an excellent way, because the Judeo-Christian tradition and Islam, they are extremely rationalistic religions on the world stage. Actually, they're about proofs and the written word and being able to write it down and all those sorts of things that we find. That they're the sort of Chicherin school of religion.
Yeah.
But this Sikh guru that had written, he said that in the Sikh community, if you go to someone and you say, let's debate the existence of God, they'll say, well, this is a silly debate. God evidently exists, right? It's just a fact of nature. So it's because I suppose it would be like saying, let's debate if reality exists. Because God is reality. So it would be like that sort of, you would find yourself in a loop. And I think that Pynchon is bringing that into this. I mean, because again, anytime we've got some sense of the divine, it's not a sense of does it exist. It's a sense of it is your experience. What we're talking about is your undiluted experience of the world. That would be God. And you see what I'm saying? In the Christian tradition, we're too good at it because of the way Christianity has matured over time. The processes of science and early pseudoscience and all sorts of things that it came through. It seems to be amalgamated with that, and it needs to sort of give the scientific explanation.
Yeah.
Whereas there's possibility to say it doesn't make sense to give the rationalistic or scientific account of my religion. What I'm saying to you is that whatever this thing that's called God, we can equally call it reality or experience.
Sure.
Or the Kyrgyz light.
There you go. And to bring back David Lynch, a lot of times he says my movies don't make sense because life doesn't make sense. So like he said, I mean, I think he's tongue in cheek. I think he believes his movies are coherent, but he's like, if they don't to you, then go outside and tell me what. You'll get frustrated the minute you walk outside your house because something doesn't line up perfectly, and exactly. And any final thought? I think we're very thorough here, but any final thoughts on Gravity's Rainbow? I say pick it up and read it and try it. And this is a damn good companion piece if I can tout our own work here. So if you are confused, I mean, obviously, did we hit every plot point? No, there's just going to be things you don't understand.
You're never going to.
Yeah, no. There's going to be certain things you just don't understand. Now, I will say the exegesis of Thomas Pynchon is a pretty good chapter by chapter thing. It's about as good as you'll get in a written word. So that will help as a thing. I think it's essential reading though. I think it's if you. I understand there's people that just his style just does not jive with them. That's fine. I don't think you should torture yourself. But if you think this is at all for you, push through it. It's fine. Like it's essential reading. I think it's really good. So
like I said in the first episode, from my experience of reading V, if you are finding, like I say, like we've said there, like Glenn said, don't torture yourself if you don't want to read it. That's fine. Yeah. But I would caution. I would just say if you're feeling I don't want to read this, try doing what I did with V and just read it as though it were music. Just enjoy the sounds.
Yes.
And because he's such a master of. He's a master of landscape. he's a master of place, descriptions of place, and he's a master of musicality. Yes. His language is beautiful for its own sake. So that gets you through sometimes. You know, everyone who reads Gravity's Rainbow will at some point say, I don't want to read this anymore. It's too much.
Oh, yeah. Five times for me, I counted. Yeah.
If you go into it and you just say, but look at the beauty of the language, and good. You just do that for a while, then you'll get through, I think.
It's one of my favorite books I've ever read. It's one of my favorite reading experiences because, like, I've run. I'm not like bragging. I've run a few marathons in my life. It sucks. It's not fun, but I love that I did it. You know, and you actually look back on the frustrating moments of it. You look back at the time, like if it's fun the whole time, it won't stick with you, to be honest. And also to me, you know, there is this. You said it so well. Just submit to it. Just relax. Like it's okay if you're not, oh, let me skim back. I mean, what happened here? Like, you don't need to get in the rhythm of it. Get in the rhythm of reading this. Have fun. And I say that there's a few other books. Faulkner's As I Lay Dying works in the same way, where I'm like, what did I just read? And then I put the book down, almost in frustration at times, and I go for like a walk or whatever, and I go, oh, got it.
Yeah.
It hits you later. There's a delayed effect on some of these things. And it happened to me millions of times with this book.
My sister and my niece at the moment are reading As I Lay Dying, and they've got me on a group chat. And they like, oh, what does this mean? What does that mean? But they having a similar experience. You know, they just have to. Yeah. In fact, they've called the group chat the Idiots Book Club because they feel that you know, unable to read the book. But no, they're doing fine. They just, as you say, they go away, they come back, they've got it.
You understand more than you think you do. That's always what I think is the case. I mean, even doing this process, I remember going in going like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to say? And then once we started, it comes out. Yeah, it comes out. Yeah. Like it's just like that. So I will say, don't let this intimidate you. There's plenty of don't be too proud to not look for companion piece stuff to go with it, like this, like I said, it's totally fine because it'll unlock a few things. You'll actually realize sometimes when I was reading that Substack on certain chapters where I'm like, man, what is happening here? I was like, wait, no, I did understand it. Yeah. You know, like maybe amazing, there's a few other things where you just go, oh, I see. No, I am right on this. So, now, where can people find you, Bernard? I mean, we have our own stuff, but like for you, you're on X, and you we're talking about audiobooks on there. You get a lot of interaction on there. A lot of people chime in. I see your stuff on like viral, like not viral, but just kind of
I guess up there in numbers.
The for you, like in the for you, not so much like who I'm following, even though I am. Like it's like in the for you, like this is a thing that a lot of people are responding to. So, where can people find you?
Yeah, well, it says Bernard T. Joy on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days. Everyone's got their own name for it now.
Right.
But yeah, Bernard T. Joy. Just type that in, and yeah, I mean, I like that account. I think because it's an attempt to get more engagement in literature and the arts, and I think it's you know, as some of my posts recently have shown, it's quite needed now. I mean, it's a dire need really to get more interest in the humanities, the arts, literature, and that's what that account's attempted to do, and it's successful. It gets people interested, and if you want to visit me there and drop me a message or whatever, then that would be great.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure everyone do that. Again, that link will be in the description. And again, guys, there's 3 episodes of this. So if you just hopped in and saw this was the first one, go back, listen to another 2. And like I said, hey, you know, we'd love to have you on because I'm sure we'll all be reading Shadow Ticket at the same time. I've got it pre-ordered on my Kindle, so it'll show up and I'll do it. So I'm sure we'll all plan something there to talk because we're all going to want to talk about it. So on that note, guys, on my show, this is free to all of you guys, but if you go to rcnow.org or rarecandy.substack.com, we have a series called Gain of Fiction where I cover all sorts of novels on there with a lot of help for our friends. If you're into Michel Houellebecq, we've covered already almost like 65 to 70% of his catalog and counting. Michael Crichton, Fyodor Dostoevsky, Nabokov. I mean, there's just so many. There's over 60 episodes on there. So if you like that, please come support us over there. It really helps keeping it going. And Bernard, I thank you for your help because this was this was not an easy thing to get going. I think we talked about this a year ago to get started, and it happened, but it was worth every moment of it. I appreciate it. Guys, on that note, have a safe week. We'll catch you guys next time.